Welcome to Stat Masters. I'm your host, Evan Ringler, and every week this season, I'll be bringing you 20 stats in under 20 minutes to help you win your fantasy leagues. All of the player stats that I mentioned in this video are pulled from PlayerProfiler.com. I personally use the data analysis tools to do the majority of my research for these videos. Let's get it started with number one, the Bills offense. In weeks 1 through 6, the Bills were one of the 8 run-heaviest teams in the league, with a 55% dropback rate and a dropback rate over expected of -4%. In the past 2 weeks since trading for Amari Cooper, the Bills have a 60% dropback rate with a +8% dropback rate over expected. Simply put, the Bills have gone from very run-heavy to extremely pass-heavy over the last 2 weeks. If this trend continues, it would be great for guys like Amari Cooper, Khalil Shakir, and Josh Allen, plus a smaller boost for guys like Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid. It would be suboptimal for James Cook, but this could be overcome with the higher carry share that he's seen in recent weeks. Number 2, Kyle Pitts. Over his last 3 games, these are his stat lines in terms of target share and air yard share. 19% targets and 27% air yards, 26% targets and 27% air yards, 19% targets and 22% air yards. So he's been getting some consistently good usage over the last 3 games. Despite a poor stretch to start the season, Kyle Pitts is currently the tight end 5 in points per game, and he also ranks second in EPX among qualifying tight ends. While Pitts is inconsistent as a target earner, he has always been productive on the targets he receives. I don't think Pitts necessarily has an elite ceiling the rest of the season, but at the very least, this is encouraging for his future prospects. After all, he is still a full year younger than Dalton Kincaid. Number 3, Marvin Harrison Jr. Over his last 6 healthy games, these are his stat lines in terms of target shares and air yard shares. 38% targets and 70% air yards, 31% targets and 47% air yards, 27% targets and 33% air yards, 24% targets, 40% air yards, 25% targets, 42% air yards, 24% targets, 49% air yards. While Marvin has been healthy over the last 6 games since week 1, he's been getting consistently very good usage, despite having some dud games in that span. Over those 6 games, Marv is averaging 16 points per game. He has also been targeted on 50% of his routes versus man coverage this year, versus 13% of his routes versus zone coverage. This is by far the biggest split in those 2 stats. While the production has been inconsistent, Maserati Marv is still having a pretty good rookie season so far, even if he hasn't lived up to the second-round price tag in redraft. Number 4, we'll be looking at the leaders in weighted opportunities. And weighted opportunities is essentially taking opportunities, so targets plus carries, but normalizing them as targets are much more valuable. Number 1 is Alvin Kamara at 157. Number 2 is Breece Hall at 139. Number 3 is Bijan Robinson at 125. Then we have Josh Jacobs at 120 and Najee Harris at 119. I found it interesting to see Najee, who is the RB25 in points per game, and Josh Jacobs, the RB18, to be this high in terms of opportunity. Jacobs especially, I think, should be viewed as a high-end RB2 going forward due to this high usage and the very good offensive environment. Number 5, we'll be comparing Isaac Guerendo versus Jordan Mason. Guerendo currently outperforms Mason in the following efficiency stats: breakaway run rate, fantasy points per snap, true yards per carry over expected, but Mason outperforms Guerendo in rushing EPX, rushing juke rate, and yards created per rush. While it seems that Guerendo has been a lot more efficient than Mason, the efficiency metrics are split. If CMC does miss time, I don't think it's a guarantee that Guerendo overtakes Mason. Number 6, we'll be doing a similar thing for Najee Harris versus Jaylen Warren. Najee currently outperforms Jaylen Warren in fantasy points per opportunity, yards per route run, true yards per carry, juke rate, EPX, breakaway run rate, and yards created per touch. It's pretty much a clean sweep. This is despite Jalen Warren facing much lighter boxes than Najee. While Warren has been a lot more efficient in the past, Najee is actually looking like the player he was drafted to be. Now let's go to a quick word from the Podfather.
Oh, every week I'm answering these start-sit questions on Sunday morning. I go to the weekly rankings on PlayerProfiler.com just to make sure that my instincts are correct, and sometimes they're not. And guess what? More often than not, I go with the projections. You may not feel great about starting Daniel Jones or Wan'Dale Robinson, but the projections say, hey, that's the move. It may not feel right, but you use those projections to get it right. That's the power of the Player Profiler system. It's Evan Ringler, it's Bradley Stalder, it's Theo Greminger, of course, it's Billy Muzio making these rankings possible. The season rankings, so you know who to pick up, who to trade for. The dynasty rankings are part of this. The offensive line rankings from Dan Fornick, one of the best in the business. Then we get our cornerback rankings, which show which corners are matched up with which wide receivers. And now, in collaboration with the IDP show, we have IDP rankings. Did you know that? Did you? So go to playerprofiler.com, use promo code PODFATHER. Get you 25% off the player rankings package right now at playerprofiler.com. Enjoy!
All right, let's get back to it. We'll be looking at Tank Bigsby versus Travis Etienne. Tank is currently outperforming Travis in fantasy points per opportunity, yards per route run, true yards per carry, juke rate, EPX, breakaway run rate, and yards created per touch. Etienne hasn't been efficient in the last 2 years, while Tank has been one of the most efficient backs in his small sample. However, neither is a top 30 running back in our projections, as we expect a split backfield in an average to below average offense. Etienne has lost a ton of dynasty value this year. Number 8, Austin Ekeler. Among 45 running backs with 50 or more weighted opportunities, Austin Ekeler ranks 7th in breakaway run rate, tied for 13th in rushing EPX, 3rd in true yards per carry, 7th in yards per route run, and 3rd in yards per carry over expected. While B-Rob has been very efficient this year, Ekeler has been no slouch either. With Jaden Daniels taking 30% of his team's carries, I find it unlikely that any of their 3 running backs will be great in fantasy. In order to get there, an injury would probably be necessary. Number 9 will be comparing Zay Flowers to Diontae Johnson. Among 41 wide receivers with 200 or more routes, these are how Flowers and Johnson compare. In air yard share, Diontae has a slight lead. In receiving EPX, Flowers has a sizable lead. In slot rate, Flowers is at 14th while Diontae is at 45th, so there's a big discrepancy there. In target rate, both are very elite, both ranking in the top 10. Target rate versus man and target rate versus zone, Diontae does outperform Flowers by a narrow margin. But in yak per reception and yards per route run, Flowers is fairly dominant against Diontae. While Diontae has earned targets at a higher rate than Zay, Flowers is clearly far more explosive at this point in his career. I expect Flowers to continue being the target leader in this offense, even when Diontae is fully integrated into the game plan. Number 10, Andre Iosivas. Among 41 wide receivers with 200 or more routes this year, Iosivas ranks last in target rate, last in yak per reception, 38th in air yard share, and last in yards per route run. Iosivas looked like a fun player at the beginning of the year, but he's been a complete zero. This is despite playing 3 games without T. Higgins. I think we can move on in all formats and, just get rid of him for anything. Number 11, Nico Collins. Among 74 wide receivers with 150 or more routes this year, Nico ranks 7th in air yard share, 2nd in expected points per game, 1st in actual points per game, 4th in expected touchdowns, 3rd in target rate, 12th in yak per reception, and 1st in yards per route run. When Nico returns to the Texans, he isn't just a wide receiver 1. He's potentially the wide receiver 1, especially now that Diggs is out for the year. Number 12 will be comparing the Bucs wide receivers. Among 102 wide receivers with 100-plus routes this year, these are how the 3 top Bucs receivers perform. In air yard share, we have McMillan at 58th, and then Shepard and Palmer outside the top 80. In target rate, all of the Bucs receivers are outside of the top 80. In yards per route run, it's the same story. All of them are outside the top 80. In slot rate, we have Shepard at 30th, Palmer at 58th, and McMillan at 77th. In expected points per game, we have McMillan at 72nd and Shepard and Palmer outside the top 80. I don't think we should be super excited about any of these guys. Yes, McMillan played the most routes or ran the most routes and earned the most targets last week, but that's no guarantee that he will produce at a fantasy relevant level. Number 13, Josh Downs. Downs is currently the only wide receiver in the NFL to have 150 plus routes, a 30% target rate versus man, and a 30% target rate versus zone. And he's over 32% against man and zone. So that's incredibly impressive. He is unquestionably the wide receiver 1 in Indianapolis and a wide receiver 2 in fantasy as long as Flacco is under center. Number 14, don't forget about Trey McBride. With so many tight ends producing at the moment, we should remember just how elite Trey McBride really is. Among 32 tight ends with 100 plus routes this year, McBride ranks first in air yard share, first in target rate, first in target share, fourth in yards per route run, second in expected points per game, and third in actual points per game. Really, if McBride was on a better offense, he would be the tight end 1 overall. But right now, I think we have to rank Kittle there or Bowers. There's just so many great tight ends, but McBride's usage is the best out of all of them. Number 15, the Chiefs offense. They currently rank 14th in EPA per dropback, the worst mark of Mahomes' career. However, they rank second in dropback success rate. Mahomes has certainly figured out how to consistently make positive plays, even if he's struggling with explosive plays and turnovers. The Chiefs' run game has been dominant this year in terms of consistency as well, ranking first in rushing success rate by a huge margin. This results in an overall success rate that ranks first for the KC offense, despite ranking 10th in EPA per play. So while they're struggling to create explosives, they are consistently moving the football forward. Number 16, Anthony Richardson. He ranks first in yards per attempt at 13.1 yards, while the second highest is Brock Purdy at 9.5. So that's a gigantic margin there. He also ranks 11th in money throws and 10th in deep ball accuracy rating. This checks out with what I've seen. Yes, he obviously struggles with accuracy in the short to intermediate portions of the field, but downfield, Richardson's deep ball is a thing of beauty. Number 17 is the Colts play volume. With Richardson under center, they have 0.27 plays per minute over expected, which is 5 times higher than any other team. They also run 55 plays per game, though, which is far lower than any other team. And they have a minus 9% dropback rate over expected, which is the worst in the league. With Joe Flacco under center, they are negative 0.03 plays per minute over expected, which is right around average. But they run 66 plays per game, which is higher than any other team. And they have a positive 1% dropback rate over expected, which is slightly above average. With Joe Flacco under center, the Colts will run significantly more plays. They will pass at a much higher rate too on a per play basis. The Colts pass volume is about to go through the roof. Number 18, the Browns play volume. Not only is Jameis a better passer that's willing to take more risks than Deshaun Watson, but he will also turn dropbacks into pass attempts at a much higher rate. Watson this year had a sack plus scramble rate of 20%, which only compares to Jaden Daniels and Drake May. In Jameis' small sample, he has the lowest sack plus scramble rate in football at 5.4%, even below guys like Kirk Cousins, who are statues in the pocket. The Browns are also dropping back at a similar rate versus expectation with both quarterbacks. So we should expect significantly more pass attempts for Jameis and that he will be better on those pass attempts. Number 19, the Ravens pass funnel. Currently, the Ravens rank 26th in EPA per play on defense. Against the pass, Baltimore ranks 28th in EPA per dropback and 26th in dropback success rate. Meanwhile, against the run, They rank 5th in EPA per rush and 1st in success rate. This is the premier pass funnel in the NFL this season. 1, they will be leading in a lot of games. 2, most teams won't even try to run on them because they're so good in that area. And 3, they allow a ton of explosives through the air. We should be targeting all passing games versus the Ravens in fantasy. This week, they get Bo Nix and the Broncos. While it could be a get-right game for the Baltimore D, I think we should expect Nix to have a pretty good day. Number 20, the Saints run funnel. This is not as drastic as the Ravens, but the Saints are definitely the top run funnel defense. They currently rank 6th in EPA per dropback and 11th in dropback success rate. But against the run, they are 30th in EPA per rush and 27th in rushing success rate. Only 3 teams currently allow more EPA per play on rushes than dropbacks. Those 3 teams are the Broncos, who have an elite defense, the Bears, who have a great defense, and the Saints, who have a mediocre defense. They rank in the middle of the pack for most metrics. So we should be targeting all running games versus the Saints. This week they get the Panthers, so hopefully Chuba Hubbard has a great day. Thanks for joining me this week on Stat Masters, and I'll see you again next Friday for 20 stats in under 20 minutes.